So, Dane, I have an exciting announcement to make on WMD Podcast, otherwise known as Weapons of Meme Destruction. You ready?
Before you say it, is this going to have to come with some sort of disclaimer so that it can't be sound bit out later and we get canceled for it?
You might want to do that.
Okay, disclaimer. Whatever David is about to say is in jest. So any piece of shit that comes along after the fact when we're a massive, massive, famous and successful podcast, they clip this out. They've done so disingenuously and to smear us and for nothing more. David, take it away.
Wow, they should hire you at every stand-up event just to fucking kill the mood right above. Like, you do know that you cut the joke off at the knees when you say all of that thing.
Oh.
You realize that, right?
Should we take this out?
No, it's very us. So anyway, I was going to come out as a racist. Apparently, I've been labeled a racist. I didn't know how I did it. But way back on episode number 5, that I had a problem with a biker that you should go back and listen to on WMD Podcast, episode 5/.com, whatever our website is. We didn't have video back then, so it's just me ranting. Basically, I just rant against these cyclists down here in Florida. They just have reckless abandon. They're a pedestrian when they say they are. They're a vehicle when they want to be. And they're fucking stupid all the time. They're stupid little sperm outfits. And there's, ooh, look how aerodynamic my fucking helmet is. I hope it falls off. And you knock your 2 front teeth out, you selfish son of a bitch. You're holding up you're slowing up production. We're trying to get home. We're trying to see our families. It's been a long goddamn day, but here you are. Shit, I'm turning into episode 5 again. But here you are, impeding me from doing that, slowing me down because of your fitness. That's like if I walked out into the middle of a fucking road and just started deadlifting. Like, you guys gotta deal with it. Fitness comes first, bitches.
Now, what does this all have to do with racism, you might ask?
Yeah, please, Dane, draw the line.
Nameless, faceless guy is going to put up a screenshot of an article that was written in. I'm just recalling this off the top of my head. I think it was like the San Francisco Chronicle or something.
What a fucking pull, by the way. Just off the top of your head?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, would this come from anywhere else other than San Francisco? I mean, the odds that I got that right are pretty high.
They were pretty much nailing it in San Fran, by the way.
But this lady wrote an article, which if it was in the Babylon Bee, you would totally think this is satire. But I'm pretty sure she was serious, and wrote an article saying that harboring animosity towards bicyclists is really couched in the same sort of moral failings as racism and homophobia and of the other buzzwords that makes you a bigot these days. So yeah, David was way ahead of the curve with his racism.
Apparently,
on hating bikers.
Listen, I've said it a couple of times off the podcast. I'm officially comfortable enough to say it on the podcast. When all those people were like, "I can't believe that guy drove a truck through that crowd of people that were just protesting," I was like, I was going 15 miles per hour on a main thoroughfare because there's 50 cyclists. And I said, you know what? I fucking get it. I get it. I'm this close to being him on CNN right now. I'm on the edge. So anyway, apparently I'm racist. Finally, I fought it for so long, but I'm coming out of the closet as a racist against cyclists.
And sorry, I know the video people can see it, but for the audio only listeners, to close the loop on her line of argument there. I'm not even going to call it logic because it's not. But she said something to the effect of, as all of those other buzzword things that are bad, they are based in fundamentally this sort of like status quo, one group is better than another group. And that's what all those other hatreds are based on. And so you're probably like a car elitist if you dislike bicyclists. And so therefore your hatred of bicyclists is very, very racist adjacent. I muddled through her argument, but that's basically the point she was trying to make.
That used to be the old like Freudian bullshit. It's like if you had any kind of problem, it all went back to you want to fuck your mom.
Well, people like her are all Freudian. They are the racist bigots, whatever.
You're racist.
And they just yell it at everybody else because they hate themselves.
Because you're a Nazi now. You're stupid. I don't have to listen
I
to
don't know
you.
why David all of a sudden took the Terrence and Phillip
I don't like it.
mannerisms, but it works.
I don't like it. It's what I hear. Yes, I don't have to listen.
So with that being said, David, should we get into the actual topics of today? Now that you've stroked your...
it's actually kind of, if you're ready to come out as a racist, it's actually quite freeing.
There's really nothing else anybody can call. They can't call you anything.
No, what are you gonna say? That's gonna hurt my feelings. So
yeah.
What? I'm already a racist. I'm already the worst thing ever. Anyway, sorry. Oh, so the meme destruction today. We fucks with Fox and their Chiron? Is that how you say it? Chiron?
Yeah.
New word I just learned today.
CHYRON. Look it up, bookworms.
Yeah, and I even spelled it right too. Anyway, Culture Corner. The self-made man. Let's discuss.
Yeah.
All right. Hard-hitting journalism. All right. Epstein didn't kill himself. The DHS social credit score and Amazon canceling housing.
Yeah.
Bet you didn't know they could do that, did
Those
you?
are things that also
You
happen
big
in
dumb
the world.
Dummy. Yeah, come on in. Come on in. Yeah, look at my children. Listen to them all the time. Order whatever they say offline. Nothing bad will ever happen, right, Dane?
That's right. Nothing.
And the main, Tucker tweets, and Trump isn't being targeted. And I'm going to do my best Dr. Evil. Right. Anyway.
So, with that being said, let's jump into episode 150. It's kind of a big deal. Nice round numbers. We're here to celebrate it.
Listen, we survived. We haven't been suicided yet.
That's right. We've said plenty of suicidal things according to the Clintons, but yet here we are.
Here's to the next 50 to 200.
That's right. Welcome to Weapons and Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 150, the fighting 150th, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/150. You can get it on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons and Meme Destruction. You can also get the video on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. And as I promised last week, because I failed last week, but I promised to rectify that this week.
Remember the Dane current talking to Dane future?
Yeah, it worked.
There's a little bit in there.
It worked.
If you didn't see it, go back and watch it.
That text number so that you can stay in better, closer, more intimate contact with your fellow not your fellow. These two co-hosts, I complicated it. I made it too complicated. It wasn't necessary.
It's okay. It's fine.
Anyway, the text number that I referred to on episode 149, and for those of you for whom episode 150 is the first episode.
I want credit. I did get the numbers, the WMDP.
Oh, nice.
I got I knew a little bit of it.
Nice.
So
David has memorized the letters on his phone, so he knows which number correlates with what. But I'm going to tell you, so there's no guesswork. That text number is, and for those of you whom episode 150 is your first episode, I forgot last week to write down the number that you would text in so that you can get things like notifications from the show about when our content is up. You can get promo codes for the merch store so you can get 10% off and different promo codes and things like that. And just generally staying in contact with the show because you never know when we're going to get nuked or at least digitally suicided before we're actually suicided. So without further ado, that text number is, get your pens out, folks. Do better than I did last week. It is 610-596-WMDP. And those numbers are 9637. So the full number, 610-596-9637. Just text your name to it. Text, hey guys, how are you? Text, hi losers. Text anything to that number. We appreciate it all. And you will be auto-enrolled in our text alert system, which, like I said, will give you all of those features that we just mentioned.
It's my personal number.
Yeah. Yeah, David touches himself to your text messages every night.
You're stepping into my territory.
You don't like it when Dane goes too off script, do you?
Well, jeez whiz.
Get kind of crazy out there.
That's quite the indictment. Crime in Italy.
So yeah. Thank you very much for, and occasionally we'll do promotions and stuff like that. We're like the first person to text X, Y, or Z, whatever we decide it is, can get a free shirt from the store, can get this, that, or whatever. We're going to get creative with it. So you want to be on that list. You want to text that number when we tell you to. But you're all libertarians. So, we're not commanding you to do it. It's just a strong suggestion.
Consent. It's a thing.
We're all for it. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. The meme destruction for this week is really a news source in the legacy media that is becoming a meme in and of itself. Fox News. And the narrative surrounding Fox News from everybody who's not Fox News will tell you that Fox News is this, Nazi. Yeah, that's what Fox News claims. The non-Fox Newsers will tell you that Fox News is this Nazi-adjacent propaganda machine that Joseph Goebbels would blush at and all of that kind of stuff.
I like this very much.
But Fox News is doing their level best to completely disabuse you of the reality of that assertion, because Fox News, just a few weeks after getting rid of the only guy on any sort of mainstream media in Tucker Carlson that had the audacity to speak out against any of the regime's favorite talking points, after getting rid of him, Fox News has now hired a longtime producer on Fox News who actually worked on the Tucker Carlson show for putting up this chyron, which our nameless, faceless guy has put up. And as you can see, it's a picture of Biden side by side with Trump. And the chyron at the bottom says, "Wannabe dictator speaks at the White House after having his political rival arrested." So that producer who
shots fired, bitches. What's up?
That producer who approved the wannabe dictator line has been fired from Fox News. Now, if Fox News were this sort of
you're no fun
in the pocket Trump, sycophants, probably fascists and yada yada yada, they would not have fired him for that. Why did they fire him for that, David? Any thoughts? Oh, I thought you had
speaking power to truth, maybe, or speaking truth to power. Well, I don't know. What do we say on here? No, I mean, if the chyron is to get people's eyes, that chyron is the messiah of chyrons. It's kind of, if you're pissed off that they came after your boy, that's what you want to read. You don't want to read, the Florida Panthers, they could have won Stanley, but they were just a better competitor, the Vegas Knights. And you know what? All credit to them. They won it fair and square. You don't want that shit when you're a fan. You want fuck the Vegas Knights. They cheated. They took every other player in this bullshit franchise that's only existed for 4 years. Why don't you put some blood, sweat, and tears into sucking and being at the bottom of the goddamn league for 20 years and then finally make it to the Stanley Cups after you got swept the first time?
Guys, listen, this podcast needs to work because David has just talked himself out of being a producer on ESPN. His chyrons would be off the chain. Dude,
if they can hack Stephen A. Smith, they can hack me. I'm not going to do anything like Stephen A. But anyway, my point being is, I thought his job was, I feel like he did his job too well. He's too ahead of his time. This chyron producer.
Well, so the arguments, I don't even know if the arguments are going around. This is both like pro Fox News people and like anti Fox News people. It's like, hey, listen, if you want to be a politically biased network or whatever, that's one thing. But you can't be like disseminating blatant disinformation or attacking the credibility of the office of the president or, whatever sort of like mealy-mouthed, bromide that they can just regurgitate from week to week to say that, we have to at least respect the office, even if we don't like the guy in it. Well, how'd that work out for them when Trump was in it? But I digress.
The emperor doesn't wear clothes.
In terms of being a wannabe dictator, well, I mean, I would say that, a guy that oversees the complete, debasement of the entire nation's currency, who every time you try to stand up and say, I have a right to defend myself with a firearm, he says something quippy about, well, I ain't going to work against F-15s, Butch, or whatever the hell he says.
Cassidy.
What's one of his
You dog-faced pony liar?
Yeah, shit like that. Anyway, Biden and every president,
the horse-faced pony liar.
Yeah. Biden and just about every president in American history has acted like a wannabe dictator with subtle, very few exceptions to that rule. So, I think calling any president, let alone Biden, a wannabe dictator should just be par for the course. To get outraged over that and fire a guy for it is, really just tells you that Fox News isn't as out there on the right as the left would claim that they are.
Isn't that what you were just doing, by the way? You, all your pundits call your political rivals every name under the sun during their little monologues and during their like segments. So the guy that makes the little titles has to respect the office, but fucking Bill O'Reilly over here can say some fuck shit. And you're like, nah, it's cool. It's provocative. It gets the people going, Like, well, I don't know. Where's the line? If you put it in text, it's very disrespectful. But if you just say it out loud, like, what? Like, that's your whole. Since Trump hasn't been was unelected, and since Biden's been elected, all you've done is shit on the guy. Yeah. All you've done is like say he's the worst person. He's got ties to Russia. He's just Satan incarnate. But he puts a quippy chyron. Yeah. And he's fired. Like what?
And really, I would ask you, dear listener or viewer, but really this question should go out to the mental defectives for whom this is such an offensive thing to say. Those same people spent Trump's entire presidency and every single day since he left office talking about or at least implicitly linking Trump with the idea that democracy was at stake. Our democracy is at stake. Oh, now let me ask you, dear listener, viewer, what is a dictator or tyrant or any sort of, get out your thesaurus and fill in the blank, if not an attack on the idealized version of democracy where it's, a government of, by, and for the people, at least according to their schoolhouse rock understanding of what a democracy is. It's exactly what it is. So sitting there saying for 4 years and then 4 years after the guy's out of office that anything remotely tangentially related to Trump is an attack on democracy is saying the exact same thing as a wannabe dictator. And sometimes they even said exactly that. Accused him of being a fascist, a racist, a Nazi, a bigot, you name it. Like,
Dane, save some of it for the culture corner.
Okay,
you're gonna need to.
I know. I'm done. We've already gone too long on this segment.
I'm already pace yourself.
Anyway, moral of the story is meme destroyed. Fox News is not some super ultra far right, propaganda machine for neo-fascists. It's a legacy media channel just like any of the rest of them. And their number one modus operandi is protecting and keeping in power the powerful.
The status quo.
Exactly. Kind of like David does against bicyclists with his cars because he's probably racist.
I'd probably kill the
He likes status quo stuff.
Don't look into it, but I might have. Anyway, Culture Corner. The self-made man. We've got another habitual line stepper on the podcast. Yeah, because I still don't have my soundboard yet.
Yeah. We'll get David that soundboard.
Speaking of self-made, this is a self-made podcast, like you mentioned before, Dane. And we still don't have.
And if by God, against all odds, this thing becomes successful, and we define success as breaking even.
Yes.
We're not even looking for millions of viewers.
We're not asking.
Once this thing starts paying for itself, so David and I can quit.
This is pathetic. Don't pander to. Don't let them know. Don't let them into our heads.
Anyway, I will, in addition to Nameless Faceless Guy and, our audio guy, Chris, over at Podsworth, listen, we've had tons of great professional help getting this podcast to the point that it is now, and they will get full kudos when we become successful in the future. But don't you dare tell us, Sam Harris, That's the guy who David was talking about, bitch line stepper. Don't you dare tell us that we weren't self-made
over the name
because our bank accounts can attest to the
Let me
fact
tell you.
that this thing is completely self-made
This was
at this
manifested out of fucking crystals, all right?
We ain't funding this thing on donations, buddy.
We are doing astrology and figuring out our moon signs.
So anyway, we're going to let Sam speak for himself. And this is, what did I write down here? This is
It's important.
I think
People
it's
know
a
'em.
50-second. Yes.
Don't.
It's a
do math
50-second
live.
clip. It's not a full minute. 50-second clip of
Oof.
Sam Harris. I know, believe me, listeners and viewers, before we ever play a Sam Harris clip, I make sure that I give the shortest duration possible because we only have a finite number of brain cells and we can't all burn them collectively at the
We
same time.
don't want to give them this kind of like publicity,
Yes.
on Australia's 253rd.
Why you keep dropping us, bro? We are much higher than that. I don't know where we're at,
I don't
but
know
we're
where
higher
we're
than
at.
that.
We've been doing this for a while now.
Anyway, here's what Sam has to say about what he calls the myth of the self-made man.
The myth of the self-made man is such colossal bullshit, and it does so much work. It does so much pseudo-ethical work for people right of center. It's a total fiction. No one made themselves. No one picked their parents. No one can account for how they were lucky enough to be born where they were and who they were so that they succeeded, right? And whatever story they have about being self-made, they're not responsible for their intelligence. The fact that you weren't born with brain damage is pure luck. And somebody is being born with brain damage right now in a hospital near you. So what do we do for that person, right? So it's a total failure, not of just compassion, of just, basic awareness of terrestrial facts to feel that something important is anchored to this myth of the self-made person.
David, I'm gonna let you start here. I gotta gather my thoughts. Okay.
I mean, I get it. I get what he's trying to do here. My boy, even though he's slipped up in the past a couple of times, Arnie Schwarzenegger, he had a commencement speech, and he said he doesn't believe in the self-made man. And to his credit, he thought it out a little bit more than Sammy Harris over here did. He was saying that he didn't make himself, that everything that he is today is because of the people that helped him along the way. And he gave credit to everybody from the bodybuilders that gave him, pointers, to the people when he moved to California, the other bodybuilders that let him stay at their house and helped him along the way, and yada, 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 which is good. He was paying credit to all the people that helped him get to where he was. So he didn't say that he was a self-made man. How fucking ever. What Sam Harris is saying is that you're there where you're standing on complete luck. He's saying that none of the work he's saying that LeBron James would have been LeBron James if he stayed at home and scratched his nuts and didn't ever pick up a basketball, and then one day just went, I'm going to enroll in the NBA draft, and then all of a sudden he's the best player ever. That's kind of the corollary that he's making. He's saying that you are zero of your effort responsible for where you're at right now. It's everyone else that did everything for you. So we need to have compassion. So it completely demeans anything working hard. It totally cuts down sacrifice. It totally cuts down all the hours that you could have been doing something else, but you chose to be disciplined, and now you are where you're at. And it's indicative of the time because we have a lot of lack of discipline nowadays. We have a lot of lack of accountability for ourselves nowadays, and
It's because of bullshit like this.
Exactly. This is
because of this myth, this line of argument.
This is
exactly
the hegemony that's driving us down this path of fucking extinction. Really, what it is. If you aren't going to try to survive, then you never will. Dane, I tennis ball it over to you.
I find it hilarious that within the first 10 seconds of his statement that he says that it's pseudo-ethical. Well, I find your line of argument to be pseudo-intellectual, Sam, because
I find you to be a pseudo individual.
Because let me welcome you to not a new segment, but a segment in this particular episode of how to spot bullshit logic with your friends at the WMD podcast. we've said the term straw manning on this podcast a lot. And so for those of you who still aren't clear on what that is, watch that clip again. That is classic textbook straw manning. And the reason why it's straw manning is because Sam is not even trying to address the actual argument behind somebody who's saying, I'm a self-made man. He's just putting up the straw man saying, oh, well, then that means you claim you picked your parents and you picked your IQ and you picked all your environmental factors that made you successful. And you picked, That's not what nobody who says that there's again, maybe there's exceptions that prove the rule, but virtually nobody who says I'm a self-made man is saying any of that. Almost every successful person I've ever seen always says, I think my parents, I think this,
God,
I think my
God.
second grade English teacher who taught me how to, write creatively. And that's how I became a great novelist. Like everybody has somebody or a group of people that they always say like, hey, this person set me on the path, or this person lit my fire, or this, like people say that all the time. But really what his whole line of bullshit by saying like, oh, well, it's a myth. Yeah, it is a myth. The version that you have created to straw man up so you could easily knock down and pretend like you're a bright, intelligent, compassionate guy for knocking it down, Sam, is because you cannot, respond to the actual argument that David just made, is that incentives matter, as we talk about on this podcast all the time. And even more importantly than that, when we're talking about the individual human, consequences for your actions, both good and bad, is fundamental to living the human experience. Because if Sam were truly correct and that everything is just blind luck, well then, by the same token that we couldn't say that an Elon Musk isn't deserving of his money because he's not a self-made man, then that means that the guy who chose for 50 years to dedicate his entire existence to going and get heroin needles to shoot up every night, and therefore he lives under a bridge in absolute poverty, that was just blind luck. None of his life's decisions led him to that point in time. And that's just not true. Everybody knows that that's not true. Yes, that poor person could have faced things, hardships in his life that other people didn't, that made him make those decisions to begin with. But when you engage in a line of behavior, both good in terms of being successful and bad in terms of negatively affecting your life outcomes for decades at a time, at some point, the objective observer looks at your life and says, you're an adult, you're capable of making your own decision. Whatever comes out of those decisions are on you. At some point, we are not just like a random biological soup of chaos and luck. That's not how life it works, especially among sentient beings like human beings who have the capability of rational thought. You wouldn't think so by watching Sam, critical thinking and stuff like that. That's not how life works, Sam.
Well, there used to be, I don't know if he's a Greek philosopher or something like that, but there was an old phrase that said, a man is a summation of his decisions. You are the choices that you make. It's literally cause and effect in your life. But Sam doesn't, to harken back to what I was going to say to you and caveat on to your point, is that Sam, in his infinite wisdom, just cut himself off at the knees with his argument. So if he truly believed in what the bullshit he was regurgitating onto that video, then why the fuck should we listen to Sam? Because he didn't make those. He's just there by luck. He's there by chance. He's not smart. He got lucky. Why would I listen to somebody that got there by luck? Because I'm not going to have the same path that Sam had, so I might as well give up. Why would I even try by his logic? Because I'm just going to be me no matter what the fuck happens or what I do. What are you talking about?
And for that takeaway that David just highlighted, that's what some people will genuinely take away from what Sam had to say.
You didn't incentivize people, you decentivize people.
And this is why so many people eat up that bullshit line of argument. Again, and we are being way too gracious by even characterizing it as an argument, because really it's just mindless drivel. It means nothing. He's just speaking in platitudes that sound good and make him sound like he's compassionate and he's super enlightened because he doesn't believe in the self-made man myth that he just created 5 seconds ago. But the reason why people eat that shit up is because it is fuel for the cult of envy. And that's what all of these totalitarian
And what's
ideologies,
envy again, Dane?
being spiteful.
No, not the
hateful.
definition.
What?
It's one of the cardinal sins, right?
Oh, of course, yes.
It's one of the 7 deadlies.
Yeah. But the mentality of
Thought
the
the
cult of
religious guy would
envy
get that.
is what underlies all of history's totalitarian regimes. And specifically, I'm talking more late 19th, early 20th century up to today, socialism, communism, all that kind of stuff, right? It's fundamentally premised on this idea that inequality is not fair. It's not just a natural occurrence of nature. And the only reason why somebody has more than me has nothing to do with them making different decisions than me. Like, yes, somebody can be born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They can have a family that has all the connections in the world. Just look at every fucking politician that's dictating your life to you. Those are, silver spoon in their mouth connected people, the vast majority of them. That's not to say that doesn't exist. Of course it exists. But that doesn't mean that it's a black and white binary scenario, then that everybody else who worked hard, as in the immortal words of Rick Ross talking about Kobe, bitch, you wasn't with me when I was shooting in the gym. Yeah, hard work and effort pays off. And if you ascribe to the cult of envy, you get this idea that nobody who has anything more than you deserved it. They either stole it, or they got there by chance or luck or whatever. And so the fact that I'm not where I want to be, or I'm not them, is unfair, and they're terrible, and they probably believe in the myth of the self-made man, and we should probably have the government steal more of their money, right? That is the ideology that underlies all of this. And Sam is just feeding into it, and Sam's too stupid to become a tyrant, but if he were savvy enough to actually become it, that's exactly what they argue. No tyrant ever says, I'm going to oppress you because I'm an evil son of a bitch. They always do it saying, I'm going to oppress you.
It'd be really helpful if they did.
It'd be a lot easier to spot.
I got you son of a bitch.
What they always say is, I'm doing this because it's in your best interest. There's all these guys out here with a bunch of money. They're not self-made men. They got there by luck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to oppress all of you equally, make you all more poor, but at least he'll be closer in poverty to you. I'm rich, but that's good because, I'm a benevolent dictator, right? That is what's underlying all of this. And if you pick apart an argument like that from Sam for 5 seconds, you see how pathetically paper thin it is and how transparent he is. It's not anything intellectual that you should, be like, oh yeah, he really said something profound and wise, and he's a compassionate guy. Like he's exactly the opposite. He is a high priest of the cult of envy.
I'm going to do what Jesus Christ said. I'm going to pity him. I'm going to hope that Sam finds the help that he is truly looking for with all the vast resources that he luckily has that he didn't acquire himself, that was just given to him by fate. I hope he finds what he's looking for, that he can actually come back to Earth and start viewing things the way that he did that made him successful in the first place, and not just espousing rhetoric against Trump, number one, and then because he's, what do you call that? Trump derangement syndrome?
Yeah.
Because he's been affected by that.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's affected his cognition. So, Sam, I hope you get the help that you need. I hope you come back to reality because we need you. We need all of our brothers and sisters in reality. That being said, Dane, Epstein, DHS, SCS is social credit score, right? Is that what the kids are calling it nowadays?
I don't know.
Because we can't always say things out loud. We have to just condense them down into the first letters that they are.
I don't know if it has been acronymized yet.
Ooh.
But I just made up a word.
You heard
there.
it here first.
David made up an acronym, and I made up a word to describe the acronym. We're ahead of the curve, and that's
It's fucking soundboard.
So, if I could sum up this Epstein segment on episode 150 very succinctly for you, it would be...
It'd save us money.
It would be, we told you so.
I mean, shit. It's so weird. You hear like Russia controls information and won't let you... You hear North Korea doesn't have websites that talk badly about North Korea. You hear China suppresses their people and they have a social credit score over there, and that's crazy they're doing it over there. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, you find out, oh, we've been doing it here too. We're not covering certain news stories that might have an effect on who gets elected or not. We might have certain coverages about whether or not you feel comfortable about getting certain medical procedures done. We might just be monitoring the things that you're putting on the internet and judging you accordingly and putting you into a database. Maybe.
Yeah. And, I think there is some historical debate as to whether or not this quote was actually should be attributed to Harriet Tubman, but it doesn't really matter because the quote is important in and of itself for getting the point across. And it's that she is purportedly at one point to have said, I freed 1,000 slaves and I would have freed 1,000 more if only they knew that they were slaves. Kind of thing. And whether or not she, like I said, whether or not she actually said that, the point really gets at you can only help those who help themselves. And if WMD podcast serves no other function for you, we hope entertainment and that, it's aesthetically pleasing because we're beautiful people, self-made and all.
Didn't have any genetics whatsoever.
Yep, we just picked the data points
we
that gave us
ourselves into existence.
Exactly this nose and that. Yeah.
Right. We don't have a beautiful grandma that's been on this podcast multiple times.
We hope that it at least serves the minimum function of, kind of being the canary in the coal mine for you. And again, we may not be the only ones doing it, but if we're the ones that you're getting a lot of your content from, then we're happy to serve that function for you. So the we told you so moment on this particular one is we've talked about in the past, as you've probably seen on other social medias as well, is this idea of a social credit score. And, there was a Black Mirror episode that was based on this concept. China has actually been doing it for, quite some time now. I don't know all the parameters around it, but there's been a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth in Western media about, look at those backwards, terrible totalitarian Chinese and that government, and look at how they're doing all this social credit score stuff. And that's dystopia and that's terrible. And we should, be wary of that. Well, turns out, again, the reason why I had the Harriet Tubman quote about if only they knew that they were free is in the United States or in the West, we're told, hey, we're free, open democracies, and our government doesn't spy on you and do all this kind of stuff. And they do. They just do it a little bit more covertly. And so a lot of people don't realize that they're slaves. Some people don't want to know. It's in their face. They just don't want to know it. But a lot of people genuinely don't know because what the government's doing is so underhanded.
The weird thing is, there's a really easy test. When was the last time you felt free enough to do whatever the fuck you wanted in any given moment?
That doesn't harm somebody, right? So that doesn't mean that obviously. That's not. I feel like I have to point that out because there are Sam Harrises out there who are like, you just want to run up and punch somebody in the face because you felt like it.
You know what I'm going to do?
That's not what we're talking about.
I'm going to do a callback.
To?
I thought that I could go on a rant about cyclists and everybody would always be on my side no matter what.
Except cyclists.
I wake up today a racist. So
something tells me that author was also a cyclist.
She had to be. Or at least a Peloton enthusiast.
I mean, first of all, she lives in San Francisco.
That's not very Peloton.
I have a feeling that the per capita rate of cyclists in San Francisco versus the rest of the country
I'm a racist,
is pretty high.
I didn't think I was. All right? But all I'm saying is, when's the last time you felt free to just go off and do whatever the fuck you want, or say whatever you wanted to on Instagram, or say whatever you wanted to on an email, or say whatever you wanted to on this, that, and the other? Or how many times have you self-censored in the past 5 years? That's a thing, dude. I disengaged with social media a long time ago
Yeah, David's no fun. I can't share memes or anything with him anymore. And believe me, you want to be personal friends with me on social media because I come across a lot of funny shit. Not that I'm particularly a awesome guy to be friends with, but the stuff that I find, it's very funny. David used to be able to.
That's such a shit.
David used to be able to benefit from that.
You sound like you're trying to sell people on being your friend. That's disgusting.
No, I'm trying to sell you on coming back to be my friend because I used to share memes with you all the time.
I'm friends with you right here, right now.
I can't. The only thing I can do is.
I don't have to like your request. There's no check mark in this box.
But David, what I'm trying to say is I personally am not a tremendously funny person, but I find funny shit.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not creative enough to come up with the memes that I find in the videos, but I send them to you and they're good stuff, but I can't anymore because you shut down all your social media.
Well,
bring it back. Be my friend again.
Yeah, I will when I'm not being censored and having my fucking credit score monitored by Amazon.
Sounds like they're doing it anyway.
Well, they can shove it up their ass.
Anyway,
I'm not going to make it easier for them.
Anyway, David is slightly mixing headlines because we have totally buried the lead on this one. The I told you so moment, what we're talking about here is two different articles, one Vice article and one Daily Mail article. And the Vice article is talking about, I don't know if it's called Operation, but that was the plan. It's called, quote, Night Fury. And the title of the article says...
Dude, it's sexy as fuck, right?
I know.
Night Fury. That sounds like you could like make a sitcom, or not a sitcom, but a series off of it.
Listen, if there's one thing government agents are capable of doing, it's making their job sound cooler.
Midnight Climax.
Than the mundane,
but then you get into
dystopian shit that they're actually
dosing fucking denizens of a brothel to see what happens when they trip.
So the article from Vice is, quote, Night Fury. Documents detail DHS project to give, quote, risk scores to social media users. And I just want to read a couple snippets from this. And so, sorry, by the way, DHS, for those of you who don't know, stands for the Department of Homeland Security. It's a federal agency here in the U.S. And the project, called Night Fury, according to the report from the DHS Inspector General,
brilliant,
creates a risk score for social media users for the DHS to determine in its infinite wisdom whether or not you're a terrorist sympathizer or a terrorist, period, or whatever. And here we have a couple quotes from the DHS Inspector General. It says, quote, the contractor, speaking about third-party contractors who collect this data for the DHS, the contractor shall develop these attributes to create a methodology for developing a ranking or, quote, risk score associated with the identified accounts. The contractor shall develop tools to automate the identification process, documenting performance measures and metrics related to automating the identification process. And the DHS has now claimed that it stopped working on this project in 2019. Sure it did. And by the way,
what happened in 2019, by the way, right after? What happened right in 2020? What happened right after that?
Did it seem like they weren't ranking people in terms of their risk score on social media?
Did it seem like there was a thing that got a lot more control over the population of its country?
Did it seem like labeling people terrorists for having different opinions on medical procedures went down in 2020, or did that happen to go up?
We had a general understanding of where people wanted to go and we let them go there all the time? Or did we mandate that they stayed home, put masks on, and did whatever the fuck we told them to do for 2-3 years or to this day?
Yeah.
And the DHS is a part of what again?
I mean, it's its own federal agency. It's the Department of Homeland Security that was created after 9/11. But it's under the auspices
of our government.
Right.
Is it not?
Of course, feds.
Yep. Okay. So that thing that got a lot more power all of a sudden stopped using some of its power when it got all this more power.
Right. And here's another helpful, you've probably already spotted it because it's blatant as hell. Here's another little hint to find out if the government is being completely full of shit when they tell you that, oh, we don't do that anymore, is take them at their own words, right? They say that the whole purpose of this program is to identify terrorist risk, threats, whatever you want to call them, so that they don't do terrorist shit. So if that's your, super national security, American interest reason for doing it, why would you stop? Right? You had no shame to start trying to identify terrorists on social media. Why did you just all of a sudden stop in 2019? What, you ran out of funding? I find that hard to believe considering the budget continues to explode. So it's not that. So you're just going to have to excuse us when you say, oh, yeah, we did this. And, now that it's kind of out in the public record, we stopped that in 2019. Don't worry about it. We're not doing that.
We would never.
Sure, you're not.
We would never.
So even though the Chinese, again, according to Western reporting, which trust that as far as it can go, openly surveil their citizens in the effort of creating a social credit system. The DHS has apparently been doing it for an undisclosed amount of time that they apparently stopped in 2019. Wink, wink. And you never knew about it. You were being ranked on your social media, and I bet you, as David pointed out with COVID, I'll bet you it was happening to you if you had anything less than full-throated support for what the regime had to say about the whole COVID thing. So there is a social credit score in America. It is being created. Maybe currently it's only, narrowed to the scope of social media activity. But if you think it's going to stay there, or more importantly, in sort of Alex Jones-esque scenario, if you think that it's only going to stay to those people that the DHS defines as, terrorist threats, and it's not going to immediately cancerize out to all of society to include half of the population because they happen to vote for Donald Trump, just as an example, I'm pulling out
Don't
of
forget,
random.
they try to make a list.
If you think that that's where it's going to stay and you continue to imbibe the myth in your own mind of, I have nothing to hide, so I have nothing to fear, eventually they'll come for you too. Eventually. Because nobody is full support of the regime except for those in the regime. A little foreshadowing for the main part of this episode. So it won't stop here. We just happen to know about it now, and now they're disavowing it.
And the funny thing that you're saying that is, it's a nice little segue into the second part of this Epstein didn't kill himself phase, is that there was apparently some to do with Amazon this week, that a man had an Amazon slated house. What are they? What there
Smart
has
home. He had a smart
a
home.
smart home. Oh, a super smart home. It's funny. Most of the things in my house that are smart cause me the most consternation in my house. Toilet, not very smart. Works pretty often. Shower, pretty dumb. Works pretty often. Every time I try to use my goddamn smart TV, I have to log into 27 different fucking accounts to just be able to stream a stupid sitcom that I've seen 1,000 times. So, Dane, this smart house, what happened to it?
So we have an article from the Daily Mail. Title says, Amazon, quote, Amazon shuts down customer smart home for a week after delivery driver claimed he heard racist slur through Ring doorbell.
Pause.
Even though, sorry, should I get to the kicker?
Pause.
Okay.
Amazon, a company, not a government, a company, shut down a man's house
For using bad words, allegedly.
That's the clip right there.
Yeah.
Like, a company can shut your home down. Go ahead, Dane.
Yes. A couple little tidbits from the article. Brandon Jackson of Baltimore, Maryland. Now, again, don't know Brandon personally. Baltimore, Maryland, pretty blue place. It's not outside the realm of possibility to say this guy's probably a Democrat. So
let's go, Brandon.
Tracking back to my idea, or my point that a lot of people bring up, is I have nothing to hide, so I have nothing to fear. If Brandon does happen to find himself, aligning with the political left, he's probably patient zero for that sort of line of argument. Like, I don't care if they're spying on me. I'm a good guy. I say all the right things and do all the right things.
At exactly the right time.
But anyway, so Brandon Jackson of Baltimore, Maryland came home on May 25th to find that he had been locked out of his Amazon Echo. When he contacted an Amazon executive, he was told a delivery driver had reported hearing, quote, racial slurs from his doorbell, and it was under investigation. 6 days later, he would gain access to his accounts again without an explanation from Amazon. And here's the kicker. Okay? When this alleged racial slur happened, he wasn't even home. So in true shoot first, ask questions later, a guy, again, for allegedly, there's no investigation. There's no, and again, private company, so I know due process doesn't apply, all that kind of stuff. But the whole premise of due process is somebody levies a charge against you. You have a right to confront your accuser and say, he says I did X. That's not true. I did Y. Here's my proof, and defend yourself. Not in, dystopian, everything's interconnected. My Amazon Echo is listening to everything I am and reporting it to the government world. You don't get that. There is no due process. Somebody says you said a bad thing, ex ante, you said a bad thing, and you're locked out of your home. or at least, convenient features in your home, like your Amazon Echo. So that, in light of the fact that the government is making secret lists of no bad people based on social media activity, suffice it to say that it's probably not a good idea to have these devices of convenience in your home, because they can and will be used against you.
Dane, would you say it would be smart
that's the
to
path we're headed down?
Be careful what you let into your home?
Yeah, that's very...
Ring cameras. What a great idea.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress.
Don't know what Brandon Jackson said. Don't know what he did. I know he wasn't home when it happened. Well, according to the article. But even if we assume that it's all true and that he did say that.
By the way, he didn't call the driver that. The driver overheard it.
I mean, maybe he did. I
Maybe.
I didn't see that.
Like, believe all women. Dane.
Yeah.
If somebody has a complaint, we definitely need to.
So anyway, I guess buyer beware is the
I guess
is
so.
the pithy summation of that particular segment.
Well, so buyer beware. Dane, Tucker, tweeting, Trump's not targeted. How can we get through this in only 60 seconds?
We cannot.
Damn it.
So we have a couple little I guess things to tie in here on this. What we're talking about is Tucker on Twitter, which sounds like we just made up that to keep it nice and short, but I believe that's the name of his show that he does. He really, so like if you go to his Twitter, it'll say like episode 3 or episode 4 and a little 2 or 3 word explanation of what he talks about. And he does his typical like monologue like he did at the beginning of his shows on Fox.
He stole our idea?
What?
He stole our idea.
What's our idea?
To put episodes out and enumerate them so they can be found on www.podcast.com. Go /
Tucker,
whatever.
with your millions and millions, can you throw us like 1 million? That could probably like fund our operations for a few years.
That was our idea. You
just 1 million, Tucker. Anyway,
a cool Finsky.
As he was wont to do when he was on Fox News, is he would start his shows out with a monologue. Or would he start or end? I don't remember. I didn't watch him much on Fox. Just saw clips. Anyway, so he does his little 10 to 15 minute monologue on whatever topic he picks for the day. That's essentially what his new show, Tucker on Twitter, is. All the blue hairs, all the right people, and by right people, I mean the exact people you want to piss off. Like they're very existent. When you look at their face, you're like, I want to piss that person off. That person seems like a person that I don't want to make happy.
They usually make your job pretty easy, by the way. It's not very hard to figure. You don't have to be creative.
As a non-self-made man, I would love to thank all the blue hairs because you provide
Dane,
this
cis white male, please.
Yes, as a non-self-made man that's a cis white male, that's all the other negative buzzwords you can think of, I would love to give a hearty thank you to all the blue hairs. And by blue hairs, I don't mean literally blue hairs. A lot of them have it, but not all of them. But you know, that mentality, you know what I'm talking about.
Purple hairs.
Those people provide endless amounts of content for this podcast, as you well know. So thank you.
That trough never dries up.
We truly could not have done it without you. But anyway, all of those people with that mentality that you know exactly what we're talking about, they are, hair on fire.
Super fun at parties. Super fun. Yeah. Invite all of them.
Even more fun than me and my legal disclaimers about David not getting us in trouble with insensitive jokes.
Me?
Anyway, so Tucker on Twitter, he does his little monologue and he does, picks one topic and goes with it. So you will be interested to know, tying back in with, Fox is not exactly this far right, propaganda machine because they got rid of the likes of Tucker Carlson. Fox News is trying to censor Tucker over on Twitter, sending him a cease and desist letter to stop putting out his Tucker on Twitter episodes. And I haven't read the contract between Tucker and Fox, so I'm not going to get into the legalese of their position of whether or not they can make him stop making videos. But their position is apparently, according to his contract with them, is that he cannot make content that would compete with Fox News until, get this, December of 2024, 1 month right after the 2024 election. Why are they trying to censor Tucker before the 2024 election, David? I thought they were like super far right, ultra Nazis, And Tucker has a big following amongst those super far right, ultra Nazis. So they would want his voice out there. No, don't they want to take down Joe?
Their party wins, so that they can get democracy back in there and make sure this country's run appropriately and habba-dibba-dibba-da. No.
Yeah.
It appears as though both sides of the media construct are on the same team. They just might be going about it with different directives. So, again, like, when they come out and fire Tucker for saying, when they fire somebody for making a chyron about the dictator that's in Washington, D.C., like, when you come out and you say the actual thing that they're selling, they fire you. When you come out and say the thing that you're selling, as Tucker did, and you actually mean it and back it up with facts, they fire you. If you just make bland assessments of what the other side is doing and maybe point them to maybe them being the baddies and your side being the goodies, we'll keep you on as long as you want. What does that do, Dane? It creates consternation within the population to think that I'm getting the right news. Those idiots over there on the left, they're getting the false news. And then, diversely, the people on the left are going, I'm getting the right news. What are those quacks over there at Fox doing?
Yeah.
We're not getting any information, is what's actually happening.
It creates what Tom Woods calls the 3x5 card of allowable opinion, right? So you're allowed to debate everything that falls within this 3x5 card, but if you dare countenance a subject from outside of that 3x5 card, you're toast. You're out of here. Tucker was the one guy in mainstream media, in legacy media, who ventured off the card more times than just a happy accident where he would just apologize, take his flogging, and get right back to broadcasting. And they axed him for it. And the blue hairs are losing their minds. So that's one bucket. The bucket that Fox News is trying to silence him until after the 2024 election. Where that will go, I don't know. That's a contract dispute as to whether or not they can actually stop him from doing that. Obviously, he thinks differently because he has since continued to put out episodes on Twitter. I do know that. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Fox News being the super far right thing, because again, to the blue hairs, Tucker's super far right. Fox is super far right. Why is the super far right trying to silence the super far right? Doesn't make any sense unless, one of those things is not like the other.
By the way, did they ever take the time to wonder, are they far right? Or are their side's media biases going super far left?
So that everything
are they running
right, yeah.
so far away from the right that it looks like they went far right, but they actually went off the fucking deep end?
Right.
That's what this leads to. It's like it's a dilution of reality is what actually happens. You think you're getting information that's reliable. That's the truly insidious thing about both of these media broadcasts, is that you think it's reliable. You think that they're reporting the actual news, and then you flip over to the other and they're like, well, if this is actually reality, then I'm going to flip over to the other channel. They're going to be covering the same topic. They aren't. They're covering something totally different that's blaming your side for something you had no idea that your side was even involved in. Yeah. So it creates this like feedback loop of like who's really living in reality. And that's where you get all this vitriol between the two parties and the people that have the ideologies between the two parties. And that's what they want. They want division. They want that conflict between us so that they already have us lock, stock, and barrel.
And I mean, that's exactly why it's a tagline for our podcast, but we mean it with all sincerity. That's why we call this the sane space, is because we're not engaging in any of that. I mean, yeah, we'll use it to talk about in segments to point it out and say, like, look at how crazy this is. Aren't you glad that you're in the sane space? You know, kind of, better by comparison kind of thing. You know, not that that's a particularly high bar considering how insane they are. But yeah, like that's what independent media, as it were, like us, like Joe Rogan, like Russell Brand, like Tucker now with his Tucker on Twitter. You know, he's no longer beholden to the string pullers sitting at the top, C-suite management of Fox News. He now is the unmuzzled Tucker. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks. And again, disagree with him if you'd like. There's plenty of stuff that Tucker thinks and believes that I personally disagree with. I'm sure David, feels the same way. But when I watch Tucker, I know that what he has to say, he sincerely believes. And that's something, And so I can take somebody, this is why I don't even, I think somebody like Bernie Sanders, just to use somebody on the other side, I think his ideology is terribly destructive to the entire concept of freedom. But I think he sincerely believes the things that he says. And so I can engage with a Bernie Sanders much more fruitfully than I could with an AOC, for example. She doesn't believe any of the shit she says. She probably doesn't even understand most of the shit she says.
You could have said Warren too, Pelosi.
Yeah,
you could have said
Pelosi doesn't believe any of the shit she says.
You could say McConnell.
Right.
Lindsey Graham. These are all figureheads of their parties, and they don't actually believe anything they're fucking saying.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, for Fox trying to shut down Tucker, just a stat from this Axios article, which again will be linked below and in the comments, across his first 2 episodes. And remember, these episodes are like 10 to 15 minutes. They're just a quick monologue and he's done. His first 2 episodes
look into that.
combined across Twitter, 169 million views.
Wow.
You know what the average viewership is for CNN's primetime slot? Like 155,000.
Really?
It's super low.
I thought it was 600,000.
No, it's
lower than that. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why their hair is on fire about him, because they know that people actually enjoy what he has to say. And it's not just enjoy what he has to say. They feel like he's either sincere or he's, has courage to speak truth to power, right? Because he doesn't really engage a lot in terms of the whole political mudslinging with the left. I mean, he calls out the left for when they're supporting the regime and stuff like that. But he focuses on, the war in Ukraine is not in America's interest. There are irregularities with the 2020 election that should be full-throatedly investigated if we cared about quote-unquote democracy in this country. Topics like that. And people all over the political spectrum, left, right, and center, look at that and like, well, I'm not getting any sort of commentary like this on any other regular media or the New York Times or anything else like that. So, I'm going to hear him out, hear what he has to say, and maybe I'll disagree, but at least he's sincere about what he has to say.
Well, and then to harken back to the fact that they're creating 2 different realities on these 2, what do we call them? The legacy media?
Yeah.
On these 2 legacy media fronts, is that now we fast forward to Trump and what's happening to him. And they're saying, if you're on the side of whoever, or the Democratic Party, they're saying that he broke the law. He did something that threatened our national security. Isn't it funny how often national security and the American experiment is coming up nowadays?
It's the catch-all.
By the way.
It defends everything.
Not America as a country, but America as a concept. We'll look into that more later. But our stance, as we stated last week, was, okay, we are completely fine with you indicting Trump for breaking the law, as long as you hold everyone else accountable that has broken that law before him, after him, and currently. And that's where we're at right now. They don't want to address any of the other folk around there because Why would they not want that, Dane? How does Trump differ from all the other people that we know for a fact broke the same goddamn law that he did? Why are they not getting held accountable?
And this is something that Tucker went into on his third episode. So again, I encourage you to go to Tucker's Twitter, and they're easy to find. Episode 3, episode 4, episode whatever. Go to his third episode and watch what he had to say about this whole thing. And he does imply in there that the reason why the regime, the deep state, the establishment, whatever you want to call it, this A-party sort of ruling class that seems to stay in DC no matter who gets elected in or out of office. It's like the old adage goes, like, right? George W. Bush ran on compassionate conservatism and then started a 20-year war. Obama ran on hope and change because he was critical of George Bush starting those wars and then continued, ramped up, started new wars, and took drone strikes to a whole nother level.
Made the Patriot Act even more egregious.
Trump runs saying like all these wars were destructive, and candidate Trump was really great. But in office, what did his administration do? Well, kudos to him for not starting any new wars, but he didn't really wind any of them down. And so it's this idea that the American people seem to continue to elect anti-war, America first, right? They don't say it like Trump did, but the idea is these wars are not in America's national interest. Let's bring the troops home sort of thing. Candidates that say that continue to get elected, and yet the war machine grinds on as if nothing changed. So when people say the deep state, when Trump says the deep state, and then you have, his political opponents come out of the woodwork like, oh, that's conspiracy theory. There's no deep state. Listen, all of those bureaucrats that live in Fairfax County, Virginia, that made it one of the richest
Area codes?
Area codes, yes, on the entire planet. Those people didn't get rich off their $100,000 a year government salary. They got rich off corruption, off fraud, off being, hand in hand with the military-industrial complex and all of these other special interest groups that get fat off the government dole, right? That exists. None of those bureaucrats were ever on a ballot for you. And they're the ones that really drive the policy of what the government actually does. It's not the candidates you vote for. And those candidates, and getting back to the whole Trump thing, when those candidates speak out against things that harm that groups of people's jobs, those career bureaucrats, and gets the American people thinking, maybe we shouldn't be the world's policeman. Just for one example, that person will be targeted relentlessly. And that's the point that Tucker was making. And so what did people like? We have it in the comments. I'm not going to go over it too much now because we're already long on this episode. But a Brian Krasenstein or Krasenstein, I don't know how you pronounce his last name. He, basically purports to make an argument that Tucker's implication that Trump is being targeted because he did not give his support to the American military-industrial complex and question the legitimacy of its reasons for getting into war in the past, and maybe we shouldn't do it in the future. Krasenstein goes on to completely not even respond to that, but saying that he did, and basically just saying, well, listen, you got to trust the Trump indictment thing because it was an independent investigator.
By the way, Republicans came after him in his own state, and they used to be his friends, so there must be something there, right?
As if all of this is an indication that this is a bipartisan, just Trump broke the law and yada, yada, yada. And to David's point, bringing it all the way back around full circle, is if you are going to attack the argument that Trump is being targeted by this deep state that I just described, you need to explain why people in the same or substantially the same position as him, Biden in the exact same position with the classified documents he had in his possession.
Not to mention the affiliations with other countries and so on. So.
Hillary Clinton in a substantially similar position, having documents from her time as Secretary of State, smashing hard drives, hiding evidence, all of that kind of stuff. You need to explain why those individuals are not prosecuted. If you're going to take the Brian Krasenstein line and say, well, he violated the letter of the law as defined by the Espionage Act, therefore this is a completely unbiased and
so has
he's just
every
a criminal
member of the presidency
exactly
ever.
I'll guarantee you the investigators on that fucking case violated the letter of the law in terms of the Espionage Act if they moved one piece of paper that was classified from here to there without declassifying
But thank
it.
God Sam Harris
Everybody does it.
made a video that says personal accountability or accountability at all doesn't
It was
matter.
happenstance that they moved the paper,
Yeah,
but
it just
Trump,
so happened.
it was nefarious.
Yeah, clearly.
Right? So again, that's the way these people operate. And just to, kind of close out this segment, I want Mike Pompeo to speak for himself. And why am I calling out Mike Pompeo? Because Mike Pompeo served as Trump's Secretary of State towards the end of his administration. Mike Pompeo, before he got that job, he was the director of the CIA. And, fun little fact for those of you that have been on this show long enough to know that Dave and I are from Kansas, Mike Pompeo started his political career running for the U.S. House of Representatives from Kansas. So anyway, Mike Pompeo, very, as his last name would suggest, very pompous in how he thinks of himself and his role within government. He is speaking to what you're going to hear for a little 10 to 15 second clip. He's speaking to students at Texas A&M University where he's fielding questions about, how do you do the tough stuff with the CIA and all this, and he's going to tell you exactly what he did with the CIA, which tells you everything you need to know about these deep state operators and their principles that they say, something over, what does they always say? Something over party, principles over party, right? The nation first, that kind of bullshit. That's what he'll tell you, but then he'll admit to stuff like this.
In terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the.
And when I hear that laughter and applause, I can only think of one scene from Star Wars, right? So this is how the Republic dies, to thunderous applause, right? These people, laughing, the CIA director just told us to our faces that his completely unconstitutional agency lies, cheats, and steals to do what they, classify as in the nation's interest and is supposed to be protecting us from all these foreign threats. Yet they create all the threats.
And they won't do it to
all
us.
The terror around the world.
They won't do it to us. They'll never do it to us, except for all the times they did. Except for all the fucking times they did. God damn it.
So why Pompeo? Okay. Last point before we close out the episode. Why Pompeo? Because the Krasenstein in their non-arguments will point to this and say, how can you possibly say this is partisan? How can you possibly say that this is the Biden administration going after a political opponent in Trump? Right? This was Trump's hand-picked Secretary of State. If he, because again, Pompeo, not in this clip, but he's been making the rounds on Fox News and other places since the Trump indictment saying, Trump shouldn't have taken those documents and those are, putting America's national security at risk, doing all the same shit that all of Trump's political opponents are saying that he did with the documents, right? And so they'll point to Pompeo and say, this isn't partisan. His own Secretary of State says what he did was wrong. Well, but Pompeo just told you, they had entire training courses at the CIA on lying, cheating, and stealing. And he was the director of that agency for a time.
An asset becomes a liability. What happens to our grandpa? To anybody else?
Right.
They cut ties.
That's how these people think. That's how they operate. I know everybody who's been watching or listening to this podcast for an extended period of time already knows that, but I'll guarantee you have friends and family who don't know that or don't think that, and they should be directed towards this podcast so that we can disabuse them of those notions. But that's the whole thing. And for Tucker Carlson, to bring it back around to Tucker on Twitter, for him pointing out this simple fact, this simple, irrefutable fact that the reason Why? And as Dave and I have said on this podcast before, if there's nothing else redeeming about Trump, the one redeeming thing is the fact that all the worst people in the world hate him. For pointing out the fact that the reason why they do is because his rhetoric, even if he doesn't have the fortitude, the strong spine to actually stick to his words and tear down the deep state, drain the swamp like he said he was going to do, because he didn't during his first administration. Even if he doesn't do it, his words alone terrify them. The fact that, as Tucker pointed out, no matter what you think about Trump, he is the one person who actually has a legitimate shot at getting elected. You know, Ron Paul said a lot of the same stuff. He walked so that Trump could run. He said a lot of the same stuff about Hillary, the deep state and all of that kind of stuff.
Oh, Ron. Okay.
But Ron didn't have a legitimate chance at the office because the party, kneecapped him. The party tried to kneecap Trump and they couldn't do it. So he is the one person who has a legitimate shot at becoming president again, who doesn't say everything that the Mike Pompeos of the world want him to say. That's why he's being targeted. That's why he's being selectively prosecuted for the exact same shit that Biden and Hillary, and I can guarantee you every single one of those bureaucrats in DC that has access to those documents has also done. That's why. It's simple. And because Tucker has the courage to say that simple fact, that's why he got kicked off Fox. That's why he's canceled. That's why he's a neo-Nazi. That's why he's all of these scary buzzwords. And that's why we are too.
And on that Occam's razor approach, Dane, where can they find this wonderful episode of Weapons of Meme Destruction that will lift them out of their doldrums and give them empowerment to fight for liberty tomorrow?
You can find this episode at wndpodcast.com/150. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. Not mass. Wow. How did I almost on episode 150 of all episodes, Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the right. Our words probably are weapons of mass destruction to these people.
For us.
You can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. You can link up with us on our other socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You can get in that private members only page on Facebook at $5 a month or support. $5 a month or more of support. Just go to wndpodcast.com, support our work, and you'll see the tiers to donate to the show. Again, please text that number that we mentioned at the top of the show, which is 610-596-9637 or 610-596-WMDP for those of you who love the podcast. Text that to get on our list. You can also link up with us on Tribel and Float. I'm trying to think if I left anything out. I did not.
If he did, go back to 149 where he nailed it.
And with all of that being said, David, tell the fine people how to
the sign off,
enjoy their lives.
The sign off. All right. Well, I'll give them the sign off, Dane. All right, guys. As we've done for 149 episodes, expect you to do it for 150. Stay safe, but more importantly, guys, stay free.